From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay, how much are farmers making out of every dollar consumers spend?
Anyone that started in the last 10 years, a lot of trouble.
Trade talks with Japan and China. Are we getting any closer to making deals?
Trucks are lined up behind me to get fertilizer. We'll tell you why we're facing a shortage this year. Coming up today on AgDay.
I'm afraid that supplies just aren't going to be able to keep up.
AgDay, presented by the all-new Chevy Silverado, the strongest, most advanced Silverado ever.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Today we get the latest planting progress numbers from USDA as farmers across the Midwest work to overcome a wet start to the season. Now, according to the latest drought monitor, the U.S. had a record wettest 6 months of any year in 2018 and just had one of the top 10 wettest January to March here in 2019. All of that moisture backing up field work last fall and now pressuring plants this spring. Tyne Morgan is in Missouri, where Tyne retailers are used to seeing long lines in the fall, but not typically in the spring.
Yeah, thanks, Clinton. But here in Missouri and a lot of other places, this is the common sight. Trucks lined up to get anhydrous, to get dry fertilizer. And it's a fertilizer frenzy really hitting farmers right now. In some cases, we're hearing the fertilizer shortage is so severe that they're rationing supply and farmers driving even hundreds of miles just to get their hands on any fertilizer. But as the lines to get products like anhydrous ammonia get longer, ProFarmer Inputs Monitor's Davis Michelson says minimal fall field work got done last fall. That combined with the wet spring, the pent-up demand really hit all at once. And now, due to difficulty transporting product in some cases, it's making problems even worse. Farm Journal field agronomist Ken Ferry says farmers facing a shortage are already forced to make alternate plans this season.
We talked about having plan A, B, C, D ready to go, and a lot of guys have moved from plan A, which was anhydrous, to plan B, which is dry urea. Now we're hearing reports that due to the Mississippi transport issues, a lot of the warehouses are starting to run out of urea as well, the conversion of the guys moving to that. So you want to be talking to your retailer, what's available and what can he get to you as you're setting up this planting season.
Now, Inputs Monitor's Davis Michelson has been watching the logistic nightmare this year. He fears this is an issue that could stick around well into the summer months.
And I'm afraid, Tyne, that this is going to be a problem that sticks with us probably through at least mid-June, because a lot of farmers are thinking, well, gosh, I can't get as much anhydrous as I want. I'll just come back and side dress with some liquid, some 28%, some 32%. Well, we're going to have the identical demand push once we're post-emerge here for side dress as we're experiencing right now on anhydrous, and I'm afraid that supplies just aren't going to be able to keep up.
Now, Clinton, Ken Ferry says it's go time when it comes to planting, so do not let your nitrogen program delay planting. If fields are fit and it's ready, come back later with an alternative plan for your nitrogen. Reporting from Hardin, Missouri, I'm Tyne Morgan for AgDay.
It's not just fertilizer, but herbicide applications facing delays. Some products require producers to wait a week to plant after application, given the small windows between rains. That's also pushing progress further behind. And in some areas hit by flooding, farmers can't even begin to think about fertilizer. They're just focused on cleaning up. Now our Washington insider saying a disaster aid vote could be coming into the House in the second week of May. Senate Republicans declining to take up an original House disaster aid bill because of a dispute over funding for Puerto Rico. The $17.2 billion emergency supplemental introduced earlier this month adds $3 billion to legislation the House passed in January to help provide relief for floods in the Midwest and tornadoes in the South. We are in the midst of an agricultural financial crisis. That's according to National Farmers Union President Roger Johnson. He said that after looking at new USDA Economic Research Service release. It says for each dollar spent by American buyers on food, farmers and ranchers get 14.6 cents of that. It represents a 17% decline since 2011 and the lowest number since USDA began keeping track back in 1993. Now, Johnson says the rest of the dollar, 85.4 cents, covers off-farm costs. Those include processing, wholesaling, distribution, marketing, and retailing.
We've got net farm income roughly half of what it was 5 years ago. Projections for the next 10 years are not much better. You know, that creates the environment for stress, not just on farmers and ranchers, but in particular on folks that just got in the business. Anyone that started in the last 10 years, a lot of trouble.
Johnson says his delegation thinks agriculture should go back to the old supply control mechanisms built around voluntary incentives that encourage less production as prices fall. On the trade talks front, President Trump meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Friday. President Trump has met with Abe more times than any other foreign ruler, but Japan's $67.6 billion trade surplus with the U.S. is a tension point. Japan has attempted to temper that by buying more aircraft and military hardware. Also last week, U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and U.S. Trade Representative Bob Lighthizer met with Japanese officials, the two sides continuing to work on a possible trade deal.
The feeling that you get in this town is pretty good, positive, that both countries want to accelerate, at least when it comes to agriculture, what we call an early harvest agreement, in which both sides would win out relative to a few things that Japan wants, but on specialty crops and things like that.
As for China, U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin expected to travel this week to Beijing for another round of trade talks. And after that trip, Chinese Vice Premier Liu He may return to Washington for negotiations in the second week of May. And this interesting note, South China Morning Post reporting President Xi Jinping could visit the U.S. to sign a trade deal possibly in June. President Trump also saying last week, quote, "We will soon be having President Xi from China coming." African swine fever may now be in another country. DailyNorthKorea.com reporting ASF has spread to North Korea. It's citing multiple sources inside the country saying ASF began to spread in areas on the outskirts of Pyongyang in mid-February. It says it has led to the deaths of many pigs that had been raised by families. The website says authorities prohibited the distribution and sale of pork starting in late February, but it says North Koreans are still selling pork at markets despite the restrictions. Wet fields and now more rain, really starting to put a damper on many people trying to get planting. Here's more now from meteorologist Mike Hoffman in today's crop comments. Mike.
Thanks, Clinton. Flooding is also an issue in portions of Canada right now. Michael Boutar of Northumberland, Ontario, taking this video from inside his vehicle. You can see how heavy it's raining there. He said on Twitter, quote, "Wondering how many more days Plant 2019 will be delayed by this." Rains over the weekend hammered the already high Ottawa River. Some places expecting over an inch of rain on already saturated ground. I'll have more on your forecast coming up, but first here's some hometown temps.
Introducing Farm Journal TV, on demand 24/7. AgDay, Machinery Pete TV. U.S. Farm Report on your phone and tablet. Download the Farm Journal TV mobile app today.
When we come back, we'll get you ready for another week of trading. Will we see any price recovery? We'll head over to the agribusiness desk. That's next. And later, cats are peculiar creatures, but this mom cat obviously doesn't care what people think. See why. Coming up in the country.
Join Andrew McCrae for Farming the Countryside, a farmer-focused podcast that is all about production agriculture. Farming the Countryside is available wherever you listen to your favorite podcast and is brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, the world's largest provider of crop inputs and services.
The government says the U.S. economy grew at a rate of 3.2% in the first 3 months of the year. That's a far better outcome than economists predicted, overcoming global weakness, rising trade tensions, and a partial government shutdown. Flooding in the Midwest affecting some companies' bottom lines. Archer Daniels Midland reporting in its first quarter earnings, it's considering spinning off its ethanol business. ADM creating an ethanol subsidiary to include dry mills in Nebraska, Iowa, and Illinois. And that new subsidiary then may include a potential spinoff. The company warned investors last month the so-called bomb cyclone could reduce its first quarter operating profit. It now reports profits were down 41%. A volatile week for markets, prices remaining weak due to worries about export demand. For an update, let's head to the floor of the CME.
Today in the grain market, soybeans were a little bit easier. Their bearish fundamentals are really setting in. There's a lack of the trade deal really leaves us to focus on rising bean stocks. It could reach actually 1 billion bushels. That absolutely just adds to the demise of the futures price right now. Corn also on the rise. The wet weather is bringing some buying support. Thank goodness for that, because the corn stocks are also pretty hefty. The wheat also has firmed up. The bargain hunters finally stepped in. The cheap prices did spark some buying from some of the commercials. They just couldn't resist how low these prices are. And speaking of lean hogs, they were a little bit mixed today. The futures are correcting somewhat. They're still on that correction phase, but still relatively high. The number that we were looking for as an objective would be about 84 in the June contract. That being said, that these swings were expected, and there is going to be long-term strength. You know, the African swine fever really is not ending anytime soon. That is going to be an issue for this market for a long time. As a matter of fact, even the CEO of ADM did say that they expected about 20 to 30% of China's annual hog production to disappear due to this problem. So that definitely is going to affect our markets, and maybe to the delight of some of these farmers that had been taking it on the chin all year. So we're going to watch that a little bit. Market correction is really in full swing, but bullish fundamentals still exist. So I think that we've got a lot more volatility ahead.
Brian Bassing, Advanced Trading, and Brian Doherty, Stuart Peterson, thank you both for being here. Let's talk about markets last week, because Brian's, it was a pretty tough week last week. But your perspective of what you learned.
Just quite a bit of fun selling in that corn market. Clinton has pressured these markets to new contract lows, not only for old crop, but for new crop now also. So a lot of heaviness to the market. It does feel like the boat, if you will, is tipping pretty hard to one side in terms of the short side of the market. And a lot can change here, but the last week was a tough week. And I think for the soybean market, we're finally getting all the information from South America. Big crops down there, maybe not quite as big as what we thought, maybe in Brazil, but not a disaster by any means. And a lot of competition coming from Argentina this year that wasn't there last year.
Is this a big rubber band we're like winding up here, Brian, that we're going to wait to snap at some point?
Yeah, you know, it could be, because we're down so much so quick. But really that was, I'm not sure learned last week, but we were reminded just how fast markets fall apart when they do. So for me, from a personal perspective, it goes back to several months ago when prices were better, talking to producers about value. Look at the value proposition, because when things start to go down, sometimes, even though you're not expecting it, they move down a lot faster or a lot sooner than you might anticipate, and then it's like trying to catch that falling knife. It's hard to do that. So from a long-term perspective, continue to look out 12, 18 months for value, get a portion of the crop sold in that, so if these things happen, your blow is cushioned a little.
Yeah, and Brian, for you, perspective, as you start the month of May here, we're kind of off and running. What are you going to be watching of things and keys to make decisions, or are we more watching than making decisions, or are we always decision making?
If we start the month of May, Clinton, we got to watch the weather. It looks like a lot of rain is moving across the Midwest, or at least the latest forecasts, and that's going to be something to watch, I would say, all the way through the middle of May and beyond, if we could reach that point. So weather is the top of the list, and China would be right behind that.
Yeah. Real quick, your keys to watch?
I'd say the same thing. You know, this reminds me of back in 2012. It was dry. Farmers were frustrated. The market was going down into June, and then it blew up. So if we stay wet, all of a sudden prices could make a quick turnaround.
All right. Well, appreciate you both for being here. Great perspective. We'll be back with more Ag Day here in just a minute.
To discuss marketing strategies, call 800-334-9779 or visit stuartpeterson.com. To talk with Brian one-on-one, call Advanced Trading at 800-664-2314 or head online to advanced-trading.com.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Here, meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, looking at rainfall over the past week, and you can see, boy, there's some places in pockets that got a lot of rain.
And obviously, wetness, not dryness, is the problem as we head into this planting season. And as you can see, some more unneeded rain in many places like north central Texas, although that area wasn't wet to begin with. So this wasn't completely something that's bad news. But boy, you get up into Indiana, western Ohio, and Kentucky. Those are some amounts of rain that we definitely didn't want to see. Not a lot of rain across the northern plains that have had all the flooding lately, so at least that's some good news. But when you zoom in on areas, you can see from west central Texas, including San Angelo on up into the Dallas area, 2, 3, 4-inch rain amounts were pretty common from a week ago Saturday to this past Friday. These are all estimated amounts from radar, and you can see western Kentucky, much of southern and eastern Indiana, western Ohio. ended up with 3-4 inches of rain as well. So this is all going to delay planting as we head into this growing season. Now, checking out the jet stream, at least we do have a ridge trying to build into the eastern portions of the country. Unfortunately, this trough is going to send out multiple little pieces of energy to the east, and it's just going to cause a lot more moisture to head through most of the Corn Belt over the next week. There's Wednesday. Heading on into Thursday, you can see that next trough moving through the upper Mississippi Valley on into Friday, and that moves through the Great Lakes in the northeast as we head into next weekend with a ridge trying to build in again. But when you see these little ripples, every one of them coming west to east is going to put down some moisture. So we just aren't able to dry out so far this season. Now, temperatures this week, I am going below normal for most of the plains. Back into the central and northern Rockies, Great Lakes area above normal for the southeast, mid-Atlantic, South Texas, and also the west coast. Precipitation, just not good news there at all. Above normal, Texas, back into the Four Corner region, all the way up through the Great Lakes in the northeast, below normal out west. May temperatures, we're going to do the next 90 days above normal from the lower Great Lakes to the southeast, below normal western plains into the central mountains. June temperatures will continue to shrink that area below normal into the western plains, above normal for the eastern third of the country and the northwest. And July temperatures continuing more of the same. As you can see, precipitation going above normal from Kansas to Texas through the southeast, below normal northeast and the west. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. Heading to Crescent City, California, partly sunny, breezy and cool today, high of 61 degrees. Ironwood, Michigan, cloudy with rain and snow showers, high of 44. And finally, Erie, Pennsylvania, cloudy with showers arriving, high around 55 degrees.
Coming up, Machinery Pete helping make your farm equipment dreams come true.
Hey, stay tuned folks. Coming up, we're going to talk about the item at the top of everyone's wish list.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
Machinery Pete is pretty good at finding a good deal, and this week he's back on the hunt for low-hour, high-horsepower tractors.
Well, over the recent Easter holiday, I got looking at some old home movies, folks, from Easter of 1996. And this is a picture of our two daughters, then ages 5 and 2, hunting for Easter eggs. Tell you what, time sure flies. Our baby girls are now aged 28 and 25. Well, the other day, I got doing my own Easter egg hunt. And what I was looking for was the item that seems to be at the top of everyone's wish list, which is a low-hour pre-emission tractor. Now at machinerypete.com, I went in and I searched our auction price data, recent sales, low-hour tractors made from 2007 to 2011. And the tractor that popped up at the top of the list was this one, a 2010 John Deere 7830 IVT, only 254 hours on it. Now this sold on a farm auction last September in Woonsocket, South Dakota that we filmed for our Machinery Pete TV show, and it sold for $144,000. And that is the highest auction price the last 5 years on a 7830. Now one brilliant thing the auction company, Weeman Land and Auction, did on this sale is on the description on that 7830, they said pre-emission tractor. It was like a big honking neon sign right in the description, and obviously attracted a ton of interest. Now, if you're looking for that 2007 to 2011 pre-emission tractor with low hours, I did a search on machinerypete.com and found 10 under 750 hours for sale today.
Well, if you love cats, you have to see this. And even if you don't, this might give you all the Monday feels. Next in the country.
Your next piece of equipment is on machinerypete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on machinerypete.com.
In the Country is powered by Kawasaki. Let the good times roll.
Cats can be pretty finicky creatures, but a cat in Crimea apparently has a soft spot. Just look at this mama cat. Yep, those are baby squirrels she's cuddling. In fact, she has adopted 4 orphan baby squirrels. She's raising them as her own alongside her newborn kittens. They all live at a park in Crimea, but this relationship didn't start out like what you see here. The squirrels were initially afraid of their feline foster mother, but soon settled in alongside their kitten brothers and sisters. Though the family is certainly unorthodox, the baby squirrels are now feeding, playing, and sleeping happily in their newfound home. All right, that's just a little weird as we start your week this week. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us for Ag Day. We hope you have a great day out in farm country.